You think you can fix me?" He laughed until the kid changed his life forever. Silas used a great deal of force to open the rusted chain-link gate, which screamed like an injured animal. Rain that was both chilly and persistent clung to his forehead, causing greasy strands of gray hair to adhere to it. Additionally, rainwater seeped into the worn leather of the socket of his prosthetic hand. In front of him was his workshop, which was a temple of ruin that had been squeezed into an alleyway in the city that had been forgotten. It was filled with skeleton automobiles, piles of scavenged electronics, and the ever-present odor of ozone, oil, and misery. The anger that he felt in his chest was echoed by the steel clang that he made when he slammed the gate shut. Every day is another fight against entropy. Another memory of the limb that was crushed by a falling I-beam, and another reminder of the life that was crushed by everything else. After that, he came across him. A little child was found huddled behind the slender protection of the tail fin of a '78 Cadillac Eldorado that had been gutted. Perhaps 10, wet to the bone, with black eyes that were wide and vigilant to the top of sunken cheekbones. As if it were a shield, he held a canvas bag that had been beaten up. Silas snarled, "Beat it, kid," his voice having the sound of gravel grinding across concrete. This is not a playground, to be sure. It is a cemetery for objects that have been broken. The child did not show any signs of fear. His focus was directed specifically upon Silas's left leg, and he did nothing but look. Titanium rods that had been scavenged from an MRI machine, and hydraulic pistons that had been scavenged from a forklift were used to construct the prosthesis, which was visible under his rolled-up worked trousers. The prosthetic was a Frankensteinian masterpiece of scavenged components, and it was controlled by a cerebral interface that Silas had fashioned himself. The slightest whimper could be heard with each movement of his weight. "You're broken," the child said, his voice shockingly clear despite the rain that was falling outside. It was not an accusation. Rather, it was an observation that was impartial and accurate, much like a diagram. It was a harsh and humorless chuckle that Silas snarled forth. "This is a brilliant observation, Sherlock. I need you to hurry up before I contact the police on a child who has been trespassing." A water sluice was used to remove water from the child's worn-out jacket as he moved ahead. In the prosthetic knee joint, where a complicated system of gears and dampeners was plainly gummed up with filth and old grease, he poked a dirty finger at the joint. That portion, he was quoted as saying, "It's catching." During the lateral flexion move, "Do you see?" he was able to imitate a stiff-legged walk with a level of remarkable precision. Silas became ice cold. Lateral flexion is a word that this street rat must have been familiar with. In spite of the fact that he was irritated, he sneered and said, "What are you? Some kind of miniature mechanic?" He was a little bit curious about what you were. The child paid little attention to the sarcasm. When he opened his bag, he did not find any candies or toys inside. Rather, he discovered a roll of tools that had been neatly arranged. The roll included small screwdrivers, precision pliers, and even a miniature jeweler's loop. In the middle of the filth, they seemed to be impossibly clean and well taken care of. When the child looked Silas in the eye, he made the announcement, "I am able to fix it." As if it were a blow to his body, Silas was struck by the sheer and ludicrous boldness of it. The pigeons who were residing in a nearby rusty water tower were frightened by the harsh, grating sound of his laughter, which he made by throwing his head back. When he was wiping the rain from his eye, he wheezed and said, "Fix me." "You just couldn't repair a faucet that was dripping, kid. What is this?" He struck the prosthetic's shin with a knuckle and banged it. "A memorial to all that cannot be remedied. This is a monument to failure. Pain and stupidity are both present. Poor fortune. Now, give it a go." As he turned to open the door to his workshop, the ancient lock remained as resistant as it had been. From behind him, he could hear the gentle squelch of wet shoes sounding. Not a single child had moved. "It's not you," the child said in a low voice. "The cause is the machine. We are able to repair machines." To my Baba, he was a machine mechanic prior to that. With his eyes falling to the muddy ground, the child's voice began to drift off. "I learned from him the mechanics of precision. Microgear alignment occurs. The term biomechanical interfaces. The key was halfway in the lock when Silas halted slightly. What about biomechanical interfaces? In the midst of the heavy downpour, the words lingered in the air, sounding completely foreign coming from this sham of a youngster. He went in a gradual turn. The child's eyes did not contain any boastfulness. Rather, they reflected a profound and disturbing exhaustion that was similar to his own, as well as a furious and silent resolve. "Before what?" Silas inquired, even though his tone had lost some of its sharpness. "The war," the child said, the word falling out of his mouth, much like a stone. "We have lost our city. It's over, Baba. Nothing except the fixings remained." He displayed his little hands, which had calloused in areas that were not anticipated. "I beg you, give it a go. Put it on the machine." The well-crafted wall of skepticism that Silas had created was broken by something. Perhaps it was the reverberation of loss that he perceived in the eyes of the child. The fact that a refugee youngster offered to mend a war veteran's leg in a junkyard while it was raining may have been the most ludicrous thing that ever happened. Alternatively, it may have been the child's voice, which was calm and unwavering in its assurance as he spoke about precise mechanics. A harsh motion was made by Silas in the direction of a somewhat dry workbench that was located under a corrugated plastic awning. His sigh was like the release of a lifetime's worth of air that had been held. "That's fine. Take 5 minutes. You will be kicked out if you touch anything else or make the situation worse. Am I right?" Silas discovered that the young man's name was Amir, and he worked with a level of concentration that belied his age. Rather of requesting permission, he just watched. His touch was remarkably gentle as he stroked his little fingers softly over the joint that Silas had highlighted. His loop allowed him to examine the complex mechanism that he was looking at. As Silas watched, he was unwillingly captivated by Amir's identification of the problem, which was not just filth, but rather a tiny misalignment in a secondary damping spring. This was a problem that Silas himself had been mitigating for with brute force adjustments for many months, attributing the continuous catch to general wear. There was nothing significant that Amir took apart. Through the use of his minuscule equipment and the expertise of a watchmaker, he meticulously cleaned the affected region with a microfiber towel that had been soaked in solvent from his bag. After that, he patiently used a specialized micropry bar to gently push the minuscule spring back into its ideal alignment. He did this with an unlimited amount of patience. The process required a great deal of spatial thinking and a steady hand, both of which Silas was aware were talents that required years of practice to perfect. "Your Baba taught you this?" Silas inquired, his tone harsh when no longer aggressive when he spoke. Though he did not glance up, Amir nodded. He was able to repair prostheses for the military personnel when the First War was over. It was stated by him, "Damaged devices allow broken people to continue to be damaged, fixing the machine aids in the movement of the individual." And very minute screw was tightened by him with pinpoint accuracy. Done. Silas rose, preparing himself for the grind and catch that he had been used to. He moved forward by taking a step, then someone else. Despite the fact that the whining and the residue of salvaged parts were still there, the catch that was uncomfortable and jarring was disappeared. The movement was more fluid and less taxing on the body. Not magic, but expertise was what made it happen. It was applied to a facet of himself that he had long since disregarded. He glanced down at Amir, who was carefully washing his tools and putting them away, his little face a mask of concentration. He gazed down at Amir, this little boy who had seen the destruction of his world, had not expressed empathy or provided hollow platitudes. There was no attempt made by him to fix Silas's grief or his history. He was able to put his hard-earned expertise to use in order to fix a machine that was not operating properly, which was a concrete and real issue. By doing so, he had provided Silas with something that was far more deep than sympathy, a reminder of agency, representing the force of concentrated competence in the face of chaos. The sound was unsettling in the sudden silence, which was only broken by the pounding rain. Silas cleared his throat because of the sound. "Youngster, it is Amir. It is true. That was more seamless. Thank you." The words had an unfamiliar quality, as if they had been forgotten for a long time. Amir glanced up, and his black eyes showed a glimmer of something that might be described as pride. The shrug he gave was an expression that seemed too old for his frail physique. Machines are easily repairable. Baba was absolutely correct. The rusting hulks, the tangled wiring, and the sheer overpowering entropy were all things that he saw. But for the first time in years, he was able to notice more than just the deterioration. He recognized the possibility. Materials that are raw, complications that are awaiting resolutions. In the middle of the turmoil, he saw Amir, a little but powerful point of order that demonstrated that one might use their talent and willpower to fight back against the shattering of things. Now that the attention had shifted away from him, he turned his gaze back to Amir and shivered slightly. "You hungry, kid?" Silas inquired, his tone harsh but empty of the sharpness that had been there before. "I have some canned stew that is doubtful inside of me. And maybe," he said, pointing to a desk that was strewn with repurposed circuit boards and actuator components, "maybe you could show me how you would realign that servo motor over there. Appearances suggest that it has seen better days." The pupils in Amir's eyes drew together, and he smiled at first, but it was a hesitant one. The scene was not the one that Silas would have criticized in the past, since it was sunny and rainy. The calm spark of connection, of shared purpose, was not found in sweeping declarations of healing souls, but rather in the practical, grounded act of making a broken machine. And perhaps, by extension, a broken society operate just a little bit better. This was the spark that brought people together. Silas did not have the sensation of being fixed. A weight that he had not been aware he was carrying was reduced by the focused and skilled hands of a child who recognized brokenness not as an end, but as a task that needed to be addressed. However, he felt something change. There was no longer any laughing in his throat. It had been replaced by the gentle and unrelenting beat of the rain, as well as the buzz of possibilities, which was foreign to him, yet indisputable.